Two women walked into the hearing room that day, but they carried two very different weapons. Kellyanne Conway brought a binder stuffed with statistics, sound bites, and rehearsed attacks. Jasmine Crockett carried nothing but a pen, a notepad, and the discipline of a seasoned courtroom attorney. What followed wasn't just a political clash, it was a duel between two worlds: spin versus substance, performance versus truth. Millions of viewers expected a spectacle. What they didn't expect was that the quietest person in the room would end up delivering the loudest blow. The studio lights flared to life as Kellyanne Conway strode onto the stage with the certainty of a seasoned Washington operator, her trademark navy blazer crisp, blonde hair flawless, and a neatly packed folder of crime reports, unemployment figures, Supreme Court rulings, and cherry-picked statistics clutched like weapons she believed could cut through any Democratic talking point. To Conway, this wasn't just another TV appearance but a battlefield, and she saw Jasmine Crockett, a 33-year-old freshman congresswoman from a deep blue Texas district, as the perfect target, young and inexperienced enough to steamroll into a defensive soundbite. What Conway failed to realize was that Crockett, seated across from her in a sharp but unpretentious burgundy suit, wasn't another politician chasing headlines but a former civil rights attorney whose courtroom discipline had been forged in fights where facts weren't optional but survival. While Conway radiated the confidence of a veteran spin master, Crockett carried the calm of meticulous preparation, trained to listen with precision, dissect every statistic, and wait for her opponent to build a towering case out of fragile bricks. Pen moving lightly across her notepad, she appeared almost casual to the untrained eye. But in reality, she was mapping every weakness in Conway's argument, ready to dismantle her performance with the same precision that had won her battles against far more powerful adversaries. This wasn't just a debate between two women. It was a collision of two political philosophies. On one side sat Kellyanne Conway, a veteran of Washington's smoke and mirrors game, a strategist who had built her career bending narratives until perception mattered more than truth, thriving in the gray zone where stripped-down statistics and sharp soundbites could win the night. On the other sat Jasmine Crockett, forged not in studios but in courtrooms where words had to stand against the law, where clarity and evidence were survival, and spin was punished rather than rewarded. Conway embodied the old guard, seasoned, entrenched, armed with talking points polished to perfection, while Crockett represented something fresher, grounded in facts and sharpened by years dismantling arguments under the harsh scrutiny of judges and juries. Millions watching at home could feel that tension as Conway opened a folder and struck first, unleashing crime statistics from Chicago, theft numbers from San Francisco, drug arrests in Portland, and economic charts designed to bury her opponent under an avalanche of data, her cadence sharp and her delivery flawless. She framed it not as abstract policy but as human tragedy, real families, real victims, layering in constitutional references and Supreme Court rulings with the authority of a professor-prosecutor hybrid, exuding the confidence of someone who had dominated countless debates before. To viewers, it looked like a masterclass in control. Conway had the floor, the data, the experience, and Crockett wasn't even interrupting. What few realized was that Conway's performance wasn't dismantling her opponent at all but building a trail of breadcrumbs, every statistic, citation, and condescending remark carefully catalogued by Crockett, who was waiting for the perfect moment to turn them into Conway's undoing. Kellyanne Conway knew numbers could only go so far. Data might win the intellectual argument, but emotion won the audience. So, as her offensive deepened, she pivoted, softening her tone and slowing her pace until charts and federal reports gave way to tragedy. "These aren't abstract statistics, Congresswoman," she intoned, voice heavy with conviction. "These are children, grieving families, parents who will never see their sons or daughters again, because politicians like you chose political correctness over public safety." The room grew quieter as Conway leaned into the camera, weaving vivid pictures of mothers burying children and families shattered by democratic failures, framing herself as the voice of compassion while casting Crockett as detached and uncaring. It was a classic Conway maneuver, blurring the line between policy and personal grief, daring her opponent to respond without seeming heartless. But what she didn't realize was that her shift from cold numbers to moral appeals betrayed a weakness. Deep down, she knew her statistics weren't airtight, and Jasmine Crockett, still silently jotting notes, recognized instantly that sentiment was being used to patch holes in the argument. Yet Conway pressed forward, pivoting again to her favorite weapon, the Constitution. Straightening in her chair with the confidence of a seasoned law professor, she flipped through her folder and launched into case after case, invoking federalism, separation of powers, and the Commerce Clause with crisp authority, painting Crockett as naive and herself as the custodian of the Founding Fathers' intent. "The Constitution isn't a suggestion," she declared, her voice booming as she accused Democrats of endless federal overreach. To the casual viewer, her smirk and steady cadence looked like domination, an expert dismantling a novice, while Crockett appeared silent and defensive. But beneath that calm exterior, Crockett knew the truth, that many of Conway's citations were outdated, overturned, or stripped of crucial context. What Conway presented as unshakable precedent was in fact a crumbling foundation, and in her eagerness to teach a lesson, she was unwittingly constructing the very trap Crockett was preparing to spring. For nearly 15 minutes, Kellyanne Conway dominated the airwaves, her arguments stacking like bricks in a fortress as she moved from crime statistics to economic charts to constitutional lectures, and to most viewers, it looked as though Jasmine Crockett was trapped inside, silent and overwhelmed. But Crockett's silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Seated calmly with pen in hand, her expression unreadable, she catalogued every number Conway rattled off, every outdated case she cited, every smug jab about her inexperience, storing them as ammunition. Lawyers know that the most devastating cross-examinations don't come from interruptions but from patience. Let the opponent speak, let them grow confident, even arrogant, and then dismantle everything in one decisive strike. That was exactly what Crockett was doing, allowing Conway to keep stacking arguments higher and higher on a shaky foundation. By the time Conway hit her 15th uninterrupted minute, her delivery had shifted from sharp precision to triumphant looseness, her challenges more pointed, her tone dripping with superiority as she demanded explanations, flaunted her decades of experience, and dismissed Crockett as another rookie politician destined to fade. But in her arrogance, Conway revealed too much, cherry-picked data, half-told stories, outdated precedents, and in her relentless barrage, she emptied her arsenal, exposing cracks widening by the second. What Conway thought was dominance was overextension. What she believed was cornering her opponent was, in fact, laying out her entire playbook. And then it happened. Crockett finally looked up from her notes, locked eyes with Conway, and smiled, not nervously, not politely, but with the quiet confidence of a lawyer who knows her opponent just walked into a trap. To most viewers, it was almost invisible. But in that small, deliberate smile lay the real turning point. Kellyanne Conway's overconfidence had finally caught up with her. Here's your latest passage fused into one dominated the continuation of the narrative. Her arguments stacking like bricks in a fortress as she moved from crime statistics to economic charts to rattling off statistics, leaning into emotional appeals. It looked as though Jasmine Crockett was trapped inside, silent and overwhelmed. But Crockett's silence wasn't weakness, devastating. It was strategy. Jasmine Crockett's upward glance and quiet grin shifted the energy in the room. Unreadable. To most viewers, it was barely a flicker. Conway rattled but for those paying attention, every outdated case Conway cited, herself, every smug jab about her inexperience. That smile wasn't amusement or surrender. Know that the most devastating cross-examinations don't come from interruptions, but from patience. Crockett set down her pen, let the opponent speak, claimed the microphone, let them grow confident, and with a calm, even arrogant, measured voice, and then dismantle everything in one decisive strike. But that was exactly what Crockett was doing, not the performance. Allowing Conway to keep stacking arguments was a methodical dismantling on a shaky foundation. When Conway cited crime rates, hit her 15th uninterrupted minute, violent crime her delivery had shifted from sharp precision to triumphant looseness. Her challenges Conway leaned on constitutional precedent with superiority as she demanded explanations, with surgical precision, flaunted her decades of she invoked had been overturned or narrowed. Crockett as another rookie she never raised her voice because she didn't need to. But in her arrogance, precision did the cutting. Conway revealed too much, more devastating than the corrections, half-told stories, was her framing. Outdated precedents. Crockett pointed out, and in her relentless barrage, was busy cherry-picking numbers her to score points, exposing real communities needed real solutions. What Conway thought was dominance was overextension. Punctured Conway's inflated arguments, cornering her opponent. And when Conway tried to interrupt, laying out her entire playbook, unshaken. And then it happened. The balance of power now unmistakably shifted. Locked eyes with Conway, and then came the final blow. Smiled. A courtroom-style closing statement delivered with the calm authority of a trial lawyer who knows her opponent just walked into a trap. You came here with numbers, to most sound bites. It was almost stories that tug at emotions. But in that small, deliberate smile lay the real turning point. But what Kellyanne Conway's overconfidence had finally caught up with her, and what's left are half-truths, cherry-picked cases, and fear-mongering. The American people deserve better. She turned to the audience, not Conway. Our communities don't need politicians playing to cameras. They need real solutions rooted in truth, justice, and compassion. That's what I fight for every day, and that's what separates me from the theatrics we just witnessed. Conway tried to break in, but the attempt only made her look desperate. Crockett didn't flinch, didn't falter, and then delivered the line that sealed the night. You can put on a performance, but the truth doesn't need rehearsing. It stands on its own. The eruption of applause made clear what had just happened. Online, that clip would be replayed endlessly. Crockett leaning forward with calm authority, Conway visibly shaken, the power dynamic inverted. Just as she had done in countless courtrooms, Crockett had waited, listened, and struck at the perfect moment. And in doing so, she hadn't just won a debate. She had drawn the line between politics as performance and leadership as truth. Do you want me to now **** stitch everything from the very beginning into one massive polished narrative ***, so you get the full story in final form? Or would you rather keep building it chunk by chunk the way we're doing?